like I'm the agitator.
Got y'all good?
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the BoomBapTricks. We are Denver, All Real Radio. We're at the Ghost House Studios. If you're watching us on Twitch, what's up? How are y'all doing today? We just had a shindig this weekend over at Bar Red, and we, I should say 5280 Entertainment. I'm included in that as well, but there was a party over at the Red House Studios for the Leos.
Yep, Bar Red is exciting. Anthony was an amazing host. Skip Rip was in the zone.
Skip Rip was,
he killed
man,
it.
he was on one.
He took trap to a new level.
Yeah.
He took what to a new level?
Trap.
He was
nice.
switching back and forth between like some trap and then some old school. He threw some house in there.
Oh, nice.
He started jamming when he started playing that Parliament.
Yeah.
Parliament.
I didn't realize how many artists, musicians were Leos. So that was his set last night. We're all artists that were Leo.
Very fresh.
It was really good. We had a good turnout. Makata's last night at Bar Red.
Okay. And Makata is like a staple over there at Bar Red.
She's leaving. She got engaged last night. They did like an engagement thing. Oh. I sang "She's Your Queen to Be" from Coming to America.
Yeah.
I was furious. You know why?
Yeah.
She getting engaged and shit. So, congratulations.
He's like, congratulations.
Congratulations to her.
It's all good, man. It's gonna be good. It's all good.
It was a good night. It was exciting.
Yeah, it was off the chain.
People were dancing from start to finish, all the way to the last song.
Man, I was tired too. I kept trying to go downstairs and sit down, and every time I go down there, somebody come out, come on back upstairs. I'm like, God damn, I need to sit down.
I was wondering where you went.
Yeah, every night again, I go sit down
outside.
Yeah, I was dancing the whole fucking night.
You looking fresh last night. I saw you in your threads, man.
Yeah, man.
Looking like Quick.
Everybody like I like Suge Knight, Nino Brown, just a bunch of
that.
Yeah,
all of that.
just anybody.
I thought it was funny on your post this morning, Hannah Banger from Houston. Yeah, she was funny. She was funny. Shout out to All Real Radio yesterday, giving out 150 backpacks.
For the fundraiser.
Yeah.
Back to school drive they had out there.
Yeah, they collected a lot of good stuff, a lot of backpacks, a lot of school supplies. They had some booths there, feed your community, doing the co-op stuff too. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. And then one of the things in February when we went to Houston that I was excited about is we had our interview the week after Dick Gregory was there. So we got to sit, in his chair and know that he was in the same space. And then, we lost him yesterday. So rest in peace.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting weekend.
Yeah.
It's an interesting week altogether, especially for me.
And?
I got attacked. The lynch mob came for me.
Oh, man. You've been having some controversial conversations online, man. I've been checking them out. I chimed in every once and again. I'm like,
man, they came for my head, dog. They was at me.
But we need to all come out on the 30th, right? 29th? You're in the New Faces Conference?
30th at
and it's at
Comedy Works
7 p.m.
downtown. Yep. Come on out. You can call and get free tickets if you say you coming to see me. I'm coming up there. I'm coming for the crown. It's my time, goddammit.
I must say, I know you're not worried, so I'm going to say it. You're in the toughest lineup.
I know.
Holy cow. I saw that lineup. I was like, God damn, this is fire. It's going to be tough competition.
I'm only worried about two of them.
Yeah.
I'm only worried about two.
You want to say who?
Huh?
You want to say who or no? You going to leave that blank? Yeah, leave it blank. Leave it blank.
You can't put that in the
The one guy already beat me out. He beat me out in the Springs, and legitimately, I can't take shit from him. Yeah. He's a physical comedian, so this motherfucker then threw himself off the stage the first joke. I'm like, the fuck? But I mean, yeah, he's decent. He's off the chain.
Yeah, I saw that lineup. I was like,
It's all good. They know what's up.
Yay.
Right on. Well, we have a special guest on here on All Real Radio, BoomBapTricks today. We have Miss Candi DeBaca. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Yay.
Doing well.
Thank you for having me.
We're honored to have you. Yes. So, how you been before we go into the thick of things?
Really busy, trying to just catch any moment for myself and breathe a little bit. We got a lot going on.
Nice. So we're airing in Houston, Texas right now. And with us being aired in Houston, Texas, it's a grassroots movement that's happening in Houston. Some of the things that have been happening in Houston is a lot of the community out there in the wards have been galvanizing their power and really getting money, resources, co-oping in their community to make sure that gentrification doesn't take over their community right now. So, you know, people in Houston have really no scope of what Denver is really like other than us. And that's kind of a crazy scope sometimes, depending on the day we have. But can you talk a little bit about, first, where you come from, neighborhood-wise, and some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about this before we came in, how really what's happening across the country is the same thing in every big city. I was born and raised here in Denver, grew up in the east side. Now that we identify neighborhoods, I grew up in Swansea. I left to San Diego for a year after high school, and then I came back to Denver, and I moved out to DC for 6 years. And so I just moved back to Denver 2 years ago. And when I got back, it was not my career choice or the best way I wanted to spend my free time, but I got really sucked into this activism around housing, gentrification. Right now, a lot of stuff with transportation, and Texas knows about it because I think it's in Dallas that they were trying to expand a highway similar to the way they're trying to expand Central 70 here in Denver. And so we're a community that's still 84% Latino in Swansea. And Swansea being part of a larger community, which was the Northeast Denver, the East Side, that was always historically a minority community, people of color, mostly a lot of people living in poverty. And so Swansea right now is fighting the forces of gentrification, eminent domain related to these infrastructure projects. Also, we have the most public investment in our community happening for development, but it's not development for things for the people. It's really development for the business world and mostly the people who are gentrifying. Throw a little bit of something else that's interesting into the mix. We have the highest concentration of grow facilities for marijuana in our community. And that is obviously disproportionately impacting a community of color. We have 321 licenses in a 15 square mile area.
Wow.
So that's about 21 licenses per square mile in our community, and still literally like no resources for our community. So we're kind of doing what you're saying they're doing in Houston. While we're fighting this transportation project, we're trying to figure out how to build collective community ownership through community land trusts, kind of part of By the Block.
Okay.
Our little campaign is called Our Community's Not for Sale. So that's kind of how we're trying to live and navigate in this world of changing city.
Awesome. So before we get into the thick of a lot of your work, because it sounds like you're doing a lot, can you talk a little bit about Project Voice, how you got involved with Project Voice, your connection to that, and more or less what that movement is and what it's doing right now in the community?
Yeah, so Project Voice was my the first time I was sucked into the world of activism. I co-founded the organization 11 years ago out of the shutdown of our high school. And that was the first high school reform and shutdown in the city of Denver. And of course, it was half black, half Mexican, and all students receiving free and reduced lunch. And so when they targeted us for that first high school shutdown, I was in college, I had graduated, and I was trying to organize my community to sue the school district. So we were trying to file this class action lawsuit, and DPS, the school system here, they threw me my first bone, my first political bone, and I accepted it because I didn't know any better. And they said, oh, drop the lawsuit, drop the talk about this lawsuit, and we'll let you guys, the community, be part of this renewal we'll reopen it. And so I participated in that renewal and started an organization out of that. The people who we organized just wanted to keep getting trained more and wanted to stay involved in that process. And so Project Voice was organically born out of that movement to keep Manual High School open. And when I left to DC, we had an executive director who was my co-founder running the organization. And when I moved back to Denver, I had the opportunity to take over. He had retired and we had someone in the interim, and I was thrilled to take on the role. And so now educational equity was our first love, and now we've been pulled into a lot of different equity conversations or representation conversations, because what we do is train, employ, and organize underrepresented youth. And so now we're organizing in health, environment, education, housing, and we're in all the schools in the near Northeast area.
That's one of the things I think is the most powerful, is that you actually equip young people to be able to advocate and speak up for themselves. I know that in Montbello West High School, a lot of the schools where it's majority minority based, most of those schools have been dismantled and they've been reformed into these small little schools. That's one thing I really, I give it up for you guys, because Manual hasn't fallen into that. It doesn't seem.
They're trying, but we're fighting every day still.
Do you know what the root of that is? Why they are breaking down these schools in those ways and making these small? And it's not happening over in Cherry Creek. It's not happening in like a South High School. These schools with money aren't dealing with the same style of problems that our communities are dealing with. Can you elaborate and kind of give us a little bit of information on what you might think that might be the reason why our schools are being broke down in those ways?
Yeah, I can definitely share my thoughts, my personal thoughts on why that happens. And I think it's just your typical divide and conquer strategy. And I think that the privatization and the breakdowns of public schools really laid the foundation for the housing issues that we're seeing with gentrification. Because what it did was it broke up what the mainstream population perceives to be a threatening population, right? It broke them up, sent them out in search of this arbitrary thing, a good education, whatever that meant, split us all up, and then it was erasing identity and history. A lot of the new schools came with new names, and I think that's like that first attempt. Just like when colonizers came over and colonized the indigenous, they give you, or even with slavery, they give you your slave name. They erase your history and your identity in that way. And so I think that schools, public schools, that's the real force behind this. We saw with Manual, they tried to break us up into three, and they still couldn't get it. They still couldn't erase us the way that they wanted to with that situation. So they said, let's close it down. And we've been able to reopen. They're trying to get a co-located middle school in there, but I think it's really about going into these community spaces and taking away what people are proud of and connected to, so that there's nothing left to fight for. And we're in the middle of that in a lot of different ways. And it's been really hard to organize against the housing and gentrification issues because there's no common thread in the neighborhoods anymore. People don't all go to the same place for anything anymore. And so I think that was part of a larger strategy to erase and push out communities of color.
There's a lot of displacement happening.
It's definitely systematic. I mean, they know what they're doing. People don't look at the big picture. They look at what immediately affects them, and they don't think that if it's affecting me and it's affecting that person, that it's the same. But it really is, because they're doing the same thing to everybody. So nobody can depend on nobody. We're all dependent upon them to tell us what we can or can't do. When if we have community, then we can galvanize our resources amongst ourselves, and they know that. And that's why they break us apart like that.
It's history on repeat.
Yeah,
Just because
it's
it's
the same
happening
thing
in a way that looks like school breakdowns, community gentrification. That's exactly what natives probably felt like when the colonizers came to this country.
That's one thing that we really kind of like. I've had a conversation, I believe, with Denise. I've had conversations with LaRae in reference to how gentrification is nothing more than colonization replaying itself.
Modern
in
manifest destiny.
Yes.
That's all it is, man. They move in and take what they want and then move you out.
Exactly. And it's happened globally. It's not just here in the States. I was recently in Europe, and I seen that gentrification was happening out there. And I'm assuming that any place where there's people of color, we're being marginalized in some crazy ways in those communities.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like it's our responsibility to see now that it's not just people of color. There are a lot of poor white people that are suffering the same thing that we're suffering. And we're not taught to realize the similarities and the connections, because if, God forbid, we did, we realized our struggle was the same and fought together against it. Nobody wants that to happen, right?
That's true power.
They've been tearing us apart from common white people since the beginning. You know what I'm saying? And they give common white people that hope that, oh, you'll have a seat at the table one day if you just perpetuate what we've given you. You know what I'm saying? You'll have a seat at the table, and that's what a lot of them think.
Yeah.
So
the root of white supremacy, right?
Yeah. The construction of whiteness.
Well, what's been interesting for me is I never was, I guess, engaged or been around activists before. So my family's been here since forever, and I was taught just to work, just to keep your head down and work. And it wasn't until I got involved with Chinook that I realized it's okay, like the white people need to go over there, and people of color, we need to caucus together, and mixed people, and it's okay to say, the white people. So for me, that was a huge thing. And then when we went to Houston and they talked about the redlining, but they're also very open about white flight, which we still don't even call that here, you know? So just even in the verbiage, like as you get involved with the activism and you're around it, you're like, wow, these things that I believe that I couldn't do, I can. So you, with Project Voice and the other millions of things you're involved in, I feel like making these children feel or know the truth that they can come out and say these things. They don't have to keep their head down, suffer alone, suffer within your family, and no one needs to know, and just work, and make it that way. So
I think that like it became my life goal to do that and to really pass on the secrets, those unspoken rules to the young people when I left Denver. I thought that when I got to college, like I thought I wanted to leave my community. I thought that I was smarter, better, all those things that you're conditioned to think. And then when you get out there and you're like, oh my God, this shit is rigged. Like there's rigged. These kids I'm sitting with are not smart. Like I know more people at home who deserve to be in these seats, and it was set up to break us. Every single day of college, I felt like it was set up to break us. And I just kept having this thing run through my head, and it was teachers telling me, do good so you can get out of the hood. And when I decided to really put my effort into the community and the kids, it was because I said, nobody should be telling kids in schools that. They shouldn't be telling you, do good so you can get out of the hood. They should be telling you, do well so you can take over your hood. The minute we leave is like the minute you lose that heart, the reason that you're here. And giving that gift to the kids is really what I plan to do with my career, because if we don't, we just we'll get so focused on fixing adults. It's just a challenge when we could be doing more to build strong children.
That's one of the things that engaging young people is true evolution. Like changing the minds of a young person who hasn't yet made their minds up about the way the world works. Right. That's true evolution. Right. You have a strong alumni out of Project Voice. Yeah. And that's one thing I'm really impressed by as well. A lot of the young people that I've noticed that have come out of that project are doing great things in the community on a variety of different levels. Can you talk about a little bit of how that came about, or was that intentional, or is that something that just naturally happened?
I think that at first, nothing we did was intentional. Everything has been kind of haphazard, and it happened from a place. They were conceived in love, and so I feel like they go on and they carry that on into the world with them. I mean, we've seen our alum do amazing things, and I think that part of what we create is this family that doesn't go away after you participate one time. It's the kind of organization where we serve you from 14 to 24 as a student, and then you can come back and be part of the staff. And people actually go through year after year after year and stay with the program and lead in a different capacity. And I think that that's now that we're being more intentional about the work that we do, that's the one thing that I would love to preserve beyond myself, beyond the current team that's here. I would want to keep that real family base, because I think that is what propels our young people to feel like they can do anything out in the community. I think the awakening that happens when they're with us is also something that never goes away. And when you give that to someone, they always feel connected to you. They always feel indebted to you in a sense, and indebted to society. And so I think that's like part of the really powerful work that we do with our kids. It's awesome to see a kid I had 3 summers ago being the youngest kid in the state to ever run for elected office.
I've ran across him a few times.
Yeah, I think that some of our youth have gone on to become teachers, and that is a true testament to the work.
Well, I think, if you instill that in people and they're a moral person, they feel compelled to do something, and that's why. And just going back to you talk about school, I don't believe anybody of black or brown color should go to an Ivy League school, because to me, I feel like they're just trying to assimilate you into their culture. They're taking our best and our brightest out of our hoods and shit, and they're assimilating them into them, and you put them around all these people and they think they're a part of that, and what are we left with, And
that happens on a large scale. In Mexico, they call it the brain drain, because people who go through schooling there and get educated, their entire goal is to come to the United States. And it's that fake belief in what success is, and it's artificial. But that's what our public education system is designed to do. It's designed to create this construct of success that's not really
it's designed to plug you into the matrix.
Exactly.
That's all it is,
Exactly.
Because one day I was on a flight, and I looked down, and if you look down, you see all the streets and everything. It looks like veins and pipelines.
Yep.
And it's just like we're feeding the system of the top tier. It's like we're food.
Yeah.
We're just passing through. And they're making it now. People don't look at it on the grand scale. They're making it now to where your good years, your 20s and 30s, you're working. And now they're trying to take away your health care, your pensions, everything that when you done working, you could live on, so that when you're done, contribute to the system, you die.
Oh, yeah. I'm dealing with that. I know you kind of are, too, with mom. Like with the parent situation, where your parents are getting to an age where they're not wanting to work anymore. They're looking to retire, and they're taking away all of their resources. And we're having to go back and help them out because they don't have anything to...
But they've destroyed community, because it's just like they come and they take our culture. Their culture is bleeding off into our stuff.
Culture.
Yeah, and it's whereas we were community people. There was once upon a time you always had somebody in the household. You didn't have to have daycare because you had an auntie, uncle, grandmama, somebody at home. Now it's not like that. And we used to pay homage to our elders. We used to look to them to tell us stories about the past, and not have to rely on the school to tell us this bullshit that they put in books, But now we don't have that anymore. They've deconstructed all that. And now it's like, money and power is becoming more important to us than community. And that's what they want, because if we can rely on each other, we don't need them.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if they can break us apart from that, then we become dependent on them.
That's the whole thing. This summer, I stumbled upon a documentary on Netflix called Requiem for the American Dream. And Noam Chomsky, he boiled down his entire life's career into this hour documentary talking about how we have this concentration of wealth, and that turns into a concentration of power, and he identifies the 10 principles of the machine and how the machine maintains this structure or this inequity. And so we showed it to the kids, and like they loved it. Oh my God. And then we were talking about one of the principles, which is shape the ideology. And that's what public education does. And the kids were like, the kids brought it to my attention. I didn't even really think about it. But you said earlier, you can be most effective when you can shape the minds of young people. Well, the system already knew that. And that is why we think it's a giveaway for us. But that is why public education is compulsory until the age of 17. Like, decide that I don't want my kid's head filled with that stuff and keep them home. And they're going to be on you trying to put you in jail for it, because the system also knows this about human development and our kids' development. And so that's why they're like, you need to take what we got to give to you and pour in that brain until you're 17 years old.
And it gets fed in two different ways.
Down enough.
Look, it's like they advertise directly to teens and young kids now.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like they don't even care about the adults. It's like they advertise right to them. You look at cartoons. Have you watched cartoons recently?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's
man.
so much crazy shit going on in cartoons. I'm like, what type of...
I
That's
have
the
two
other
little
principle.
girls. I filter everything that they watch.
Yeah, it's
just because of that.
ridiculous. I'm like, what the hell?
That's the other principle. There's these 10 principles, and one of them was to shape the ideology. But the one you're talking about is called manufacture consent. And what you do is you basically take people are consenting to their own oppression by manufacturing these wants and these desires that keep them distracted.
Man, this has been awesome. So, within what you're currently doing right now, there is a lot of movement happening within the Swansea area, Globeville, the I-70. I've been a part of a few of the conversations, just hearing about some of the reconstruction they're doing with I-70. Can you let our audience know a little bit about what that's looking like and how you've been engaged in doing the work around that?
Yeah, for sure. So we had a Secretary of Transportation who, in the Obama administration, came out and really put his flag in the soil, talking about how urban highways were designed to cut off people of color from the city, and keep them in pockets in certain spaces. And so, I mean, what we're seeing here in Denver is the legacy of that segregation and oppression. When I-70 came into our community, it was something that people fought against, but it came in the 60s while we didn't have civil rights. They were being crafted along at the same time. And so we had nothing to lean on to fight that at the time. Now what they're trying to do is, instead of undoing that problem that they created, relocating the highway, or being visionary about a solution for transportation, they're tripling the size of that same wound that they caused in the community. And so we're seeing people be displaced through eminent domain, which is the state's tool to be able to say, hey, I want that, I like that now, I'm going to take your property from you. And you have to go. You have to accept what they give you. And so over 5% of our neighborhood is being displaced at the height of this housing crisis that we're experiencing, I mean, locally and nationally. And we're one of the most vulnerable communities because we're so low income and we have some of the largest households. The Federal Relocation Act also doesn't require CDOT to relocate anyone who's undocumented. And so there's so many problems in what's happening to the people with this expansion, and nobody's talking about it. It's also our largest infrastructure project in the state of Colorado, and we're about to spend 50% of our bridge fund for the whole state for 35 years on 2 miles of highway. And so it's just really, I say a lack of vision, but I think what it boils down to is corruption.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be constructed through a public-private partnership, and it's only adding toll capacity. Tolls that the city or state don't collect, the private company will collect them. And so it's just, It's kind of a very blatant demonstration of racism, segregation, capitalism, and a range of other systems of oppression acting right here in our own backyard.
So do you find that the community is not as informed as they should be about the specifics of what's happening in the community?
Absolutely. I think that, first of all, they took a community with very low levels of education because they deprived them of them. Mm-hmm. And they started this project in one of the most contaminated zip codes in America. And there's so much technical detail that it's a challenge to wrap your head around. I have 2 degrees, and sometimes I still find it challenging to understand the intricacies of the health impacts of traffic and city planning and the pollution. It's hard to understand. The final, or what do they call them, federal environmental impact study was thousands of pages. And they put them there for the community to read.
They do that on purpose, though.
Yeah.
Even when they submit laws and things of that nature to be passed, they'll come the last day with 2,000 pages and say, "Hey, read through that." And what they do is they can slip little stuff in there.
Yep.
They know you can't read through it that quickly, right. And then stuff is getting passed on. You'll have an agriculture bill, and it'll be a tax for something that doesn't have to do with agriculture in there. And if they pass the bill, they pass everything in there.
It seems that the last communities to really be engaged within gentrification have been Swansea and Sun Valley. Mm-hmm. And both of those communities seem like the least informed about what's happening. And the ways they're presenting it is like, oh, we're going to better your community. Don't worry about this. We're going to get this into the community. And it's smoke and mirrors in the ways that they're really kind of presenting this whole change that's happening in the communities. How have you been educating the community around these different illusions that have been kind of put in front of them?
It's hard. It's hard because, part of the conditioning that's happening in the education system, on television, through the news, it's sinking in, and there are people who think this is a good thing for the community because it adds a park. Nobody's asking questions about the park being on top of a highway. And nobody's really forcing the conversation about the health impacts. So it's been a challenge to inform community, but it's interesting that you pointed out Westwood and Globeville and Elyria and Swansea as being some of the last neighborhoods to experience gentrification, because I've been thinking a lot about how we've been insulated for so long from the forces that obliterated 5 Points. And what my theory is that we're predominantly Latino communities, high levels of immigrants, and we're communities that before people used to say were unbanked and underbanked. And so that was a problem in the grand scheme of things because we didn't buy into this system. Mm-hmm. And that insulated us because during the recession, when there was a lot of predatory practices happening in the east side, in 5 Points in Whittier, elderly were getting reverse mortgages, and all this predatory stuff was happening because they were connected to banks, they trusted banks, and they were working with banks. In our communities, people bought their houses from person to person for $30,000, even if they paid for 30 years to their neighbor. That's how we bought stuff. We didn't go through banks. And that protected us. And it has protected us. And it could be a very important source of power because we have above average homeownership rates. And a lot of those homeowners own their houses free and clear, no connection to banks or anything.
I like that you brought that up because I'm always talking on this show, even now, like if I need some kind of assistance from my father, he doesn't bank. He's never had a credit card. Yep. He doesn't do a loan. He'll save, buy a car. So if I need help, I don't know where he goes. It's in the basement and he gets the money. And then also, going to a lot of entrepreneurial meetups and then establishing myself as an entrepreneur, I didn't do till my early 30s because in my world, like everyone did stuff for each other. Oh, this guy down the street, he does roofs. This guy paints. Oh, your grandpa did this. Or I think the biggest thing was it was a hustle. You know, and they wanted you to get a real job because they were like, oh, you don't want to struggle like us. Your grandpa just does side work. But that was a job.
Yeah.
That was a business, you know, and just the verbiage. But in growing up like that, my grandparents' house is paid for as well. And even now, like, it needs repairs. All these banks are trying to offer them a line of credit, and the taxes have gone up so crazy. You know, they're in that Sunnyside area, and you know, they don't want to do it because they don't trust them. They don't trust anybody, and
that's the best place to start with these communities.
They try to do that, man. Look, debt is slavery.
Yeah.
That's what it keeps you plugged into the system, because you got to pay that debt off, so you can't do things. You can't be an entrepreneur because you can't take the money and do this because you got to pay this. And that's why they make you go to college.
That connects to another one of the principles.
And then the disadvantage for me was financial literacy, and then being told go to college, because my grandparents were from Trinidad and they had second grade education. So going to college was like very important to them. My dad didn't go, he went into the military, so you know, they looked at us, and all I did was get into $45,000 of debt, and because there was no way to go. And I went to Mapleton Public Schools. They didn't talk to you about college. They talked to you about community college. Going to Metro was like not even a thing. Oh, you should go to CCD. Like, you know, so hearing you say that, sometimes it's nice to actually hear it, because you think it and you're like, is this really happening? You know?
I think communicating with my community is really requiring me to struggle with a lot of internal messages that I was given that were wrong about my own community. You know, the underbanked, unbanked. I used to think, oh my God, like, why can't you get a credit card? Like, what's wrong with you? You don't even have a bank account. Like, stop like being like that. And now I can see the value in that. I can see the connection to another one of the principles, which is shifting the economy. They changed our economy on us and invented credit and all of that. And that's a tool of control. Like you said, it's slavery. It's a tool to keep us in debt forever and on this hamster wheel. And I think that was something I was taught to value by schools, by media. But my community didn't value it. And when I'm talking to my community, I'm really finding those things that they were actually right about all along, and telling them, look, you've been right about this. You've been right about this, and that's what's protected our community. These are some other things that we can do to protect our community in a bigger way and for future generations. But like credit, that's huge.
And I think that's a big thing too. I think people are just tired of fighting, man. I think people are just at the like, fuck, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just too much, you know. But I mean, you just gotta keep going, and education is key. You know, once you start hearing this stuff and you start connecting the dots, then you see like, okay, this shit's been fucked up from the beginning, so we need to actually try to galvanize ourselves and get ourselves out of this.
That's what building on that, off of what you're saying. I know, like, historically, you do history, and you really look at indigenous people, and the insertion of European construct over generations of time. At the root of who we are, we've always been barterers. We've always been exchanged. That's really what slavery is like based off of, is exchanging goods. Africa started exchanging bodies instead of exchanging actual produce and things like that. So where we're at currently, in our current time, in the activist world, there's a variety of different conversations happening around systematic reconstruct and pulling away from a system completely. Where do you stand on that, and what do you think the reality of being able to completely pull away from a system and developing a whole new way of interacting within communities and engaging on that? You guys,
we got hands.
I know. There's thing I wanted to ask her about that too.
You can go ahead and answer, then I'll go after you.
Okay, so I think that there's not a real way to reject all the systems all at the same time.
Right.
You have to walk a balance, and I think that for us moving forward and changing the world that we live in, we have to understand that these systems have been incredibly effective. There's not a broken system that we're dealing with, and they've been effective for the group that decided to like make the rules, right? And so I think that there's a lot of ways for us to walk a balance where we're taking back control over these systems and participating in them. I think that we shy away from participation in a lot of systems, and most of our systems are designed to protect capitalism and profit. And so I think that if we are working in these systems in a way that takes back power a little bit at a time, and we're also working to reshape the ideology and really reshape our economy, I think it'll lead to a different outcome, because democracy in theory is a good idea, right? People have a voice, but the United States was never set up for a real democracy, and not enough of us know that to understand the value of our participation in it. And so like I think that just walking that line, jumping back and forth as much as possible to meet people where they are and help them understand that you're not gonna wake up tomorrow and be able to reject every single system that we're a part of. But what you can do is start working in those systems to take back the power.
Well, like you were saying about ideas are always great. People fuck ideas up. You know, because whenever you have an idea and it's a good idea, there's always going to be that guy on the side that's like, I can profit off of this some way, somehow. But as far as like the system, man, you can't unplug from it. They have safeguards in place to where if they do see a group of people starting to kind of deviate from it, they'll stop you. They'll do something. Right. You know what I'm saying? You think Black Wall Street.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If we were allowed to grow from there, we would be just as powerful as the Jews right now. Right. But because they seen it, they're like, oh, we can't have this. You know, so they went to the extremes. They fucking aerated the bitch to let you know, like, nah, we ain't finna have this.
It's true.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But that's what it is. And it's the same. Look at what they doing with Colin Kaepernick. They're hanging him publicly to let you see. It's like slavery. Like, look what we doing to this nigga right here. Don't none of you motherfuckers come do the same shit, you know?
It's true.
But that's what they do. As soon as they see someone trying to, like, okay, they figured it out. They're trying to, we're going to do this. And that's why gentrification is so terrible, because you have a community and you start to build it up. Then someone comes in there, deconstructs that, sends you in 30 different places. You go here, you start to build this up. They come here, then they see, you know what I'm saying? They keep moving people around. So you can't build community. You can't get be around people long enough to trust them to start bartering, and that's all part of that's systematic, man. They know this shit,
right?
So it would be pretty hard to pull away from the system.
But there's ways, and you're right. Like, you're completely right. I think that there has been in our history this ability for the dominant power structure to come in and disrupt anything anytime we get on track. But what's changing right now, and what I think people of color need to wake up to, is that could happen throughout history, because when they first got here, they killed off enough of us that they were the majority. What we're stepping into is this new era where we are the majority, and we don't even recognize the power in that.
I think they know that, but then you see how many people they try to push to the side. You see all these, you see how when anything happens, they throw these black people to support Trump.
COINTELPRO.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So,
Exactly.
They know that they aren't the majority anymore. So what they're doing is trying to pull people over.
Do we know that?
Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we know that?
Exactly.
Like, people of color, that's what I'm saying. They know we're the majority, and that's why there's all these efforts for population control.
But as far as like numbers are concerned, I mean, money and power is what's going to move it. You know, and if we are going to do this, it has to be something we start underground, grow to a certain extent to where we have a little bit of power, then we can do it on a larger scale. But if we can't do it out in the public, or they'll shut that shit down.
I would have to add on that changing the ideology plus money plus power will change things, because if we don't change our ideology, we're going to replicate the oppressors' tactics against each other and ourselves.
I just want to say that the information we received is fucked up.
Yeah.
And we've just perpetuating that message that they've given us generation after generation. And we need to kind of...
I mean, look at this.
What you've been saying on Facebook, how you saying like we need to learn from the past and evolve, but you know what I'm saying?
That's one thing that I really like looking at history, and you look at the majority. I call people of color the majority.
Right.
When you look at the majority, we've always had the most power. And then when you really look at how the Europeans developed a system in order to galvanize that power, that made us all disenfranchised. Within that, we've always, and I feel like that's really where the system has always been designed, is to go ahead and keep us separated. Because when you think about the trades that happened in the early 14th and 13th century, like, it was natural flow. You know, Africa was cross-pollinating with Asia, with India. All of these different exchanges of bartering was happening during that time. And then when Europeans started getting into power and they started coming down and being a part of that trade, and they started developing out these systems, that's when we kind of played into their system and gave up our power. But naturally, at the root of who we are as people, at the root of who we are as people of color, we weren't looking to galvanize and take over the world. They were the first ones to really have the idea of, like, let's develop a system and let's go ahead and start taking over the world with this system that we developed.
But their system of, there's always been wars and things that they shouldn't fight.
Yeah, without a question.
But they went around and they killed these population of people. They came in, they got to know them, they got what they needed from them, and then they killed them.
Yeah.
Utilizing Christianity as the staple to go.
Well, no, utilizing just straight violence. They was just going around and just wiping out population of people.
Christianity was the systematic component that they made everybody submit under in order to go ahead and implement these different policies.
And it's two different components of it. You have the violent, non-violent, whereas you have Christianity. That's the non-violent takeover.
That was extremely violent.
Well, at one point, but it teaches non-violence. It actually makes you docile, because if you look at Christianity, it's always turn the other cheek.
Because
don't do this, don't do that.
Violence, I accept. It teaches you a paradigm where you are willing to accept violence against yourself for salvation in the afterlife.
Yeah, in the kingdom or whatever.
Versus, but you're also accepting that violence against yourself. But it teaches you not to perpetuate that violence.
Yeah, you allow it against yourself, but if you
don't perpetuate it,
you're wrong. Then you're going to.
Mm-hmm.
That's man. Look, we're gonna have a religious discussion one day.
I know.
That's gonna be the last show.
What do you suggest? Like, we've been kind of going back and forth with people doing what do you call it? God dang. Where they get together and, like, with the pizza place closing, so then everybody, like, it closes and then everybody kind of bands together. Protest. There we go. That's the word I've been looking for. Protesting things instead of, like, getting in the front of it. Like, we know what's going to happen. Just like with the stuff with I-70 and the Coliseum and that whole thing. They've been building a new Coliseum out by the airport for a couple years now. But we didn't really start hearing a whole lot about the I-70 until, a year ago. So, like, it's already been in the plans. So, and then we come protesting at a time where it's too late. That protesting isn't going to do anything but cause people to be able to marginalize on people more by, portraying it to be violent or, something else. And what, besides, like you said, and Anthony building like an underground thing or getting into the system, or like there's always issues too with if you conform to the system so that you can get in there, work your way in there, and then move for your community, like the likelihood of that happening never really happens. Right. People get in there and then, they forget.
Get comfortable.
So, like, as far as coming up with, an action and a solution, what do you do?
I think that, like, that's one. You want to go?
No, go ahead.
I think that that's one of the mistakes that we've made over and over and over as activists. Activists want to pick one thing and focus on it, or pick a tactic and use that as like the only tactic for change. What I think that we need to understand is that the system as it stands doesn't have one tactic that they're using against us. There are multiple things happening all at the same time. And for us to make real change, I think that, one, we have to know what those things are. We have to identify them. And then we have to be okay with all of us playing a different role and in a different lane working toward that common vision.
Gotta take the egotism out of it.
We have to have that common vision though. What is that? What does that look like? What does community look like? What does the society we want look like? And I think that can happen underground. And I think that we can say, you know, this is the movement. This is what we're moving for. But then I think everybody can be in their own lane working toward it. I have to identify the principles from that film, because when you hear them, there's a counter or a resistive principle for each one, and we can be planning more effectively, and all of us working on a resistive principle to deconstruct the system that we have that maintains this concentration of wealth and power. The principles are reduce democracy, shape ideology, redesign the economy, shift the burden, attack solidarity, run the regulators, engineer elections, keep the rabble in line, manufacture consent, and marginalize the population. And there's a resistive practice for each one, and I think the only one that we're trying to work on is keep the rabble in line, and that seems like the least effective, because that's what the protests bring attention to it. But all of the rest of these things are happening simultaneously, and none of us are really being thoughtful or intentional about how we deconstruct the whole system versus getting out there and activating people. Once we get them activated, we have to have a plan, a real strategy, because the system is smarter than us. It's working.
Exactly. That's
and it's been implemented for so long.
Firing on all
and that's
cylinders.
the thing. I think you get people out there with loud voices, and they're yelling change, but they don't have a realistic plan to get you out. They have a plan to get you to the next step, but then you get there and you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Personally, look, this is what I believe. There's never been a time in history where anything significantly has been changed through protests. There has to be bloodshed. This is you either gonna do it one of two ways. You're either gonna be quiet, infiltrate the system, grow your numbers underground, and then try to attack it from the inside out, or you gonna overthrow it by force. You know what I'm saying? You gonna go to war. People ain't ready to give up power and housewives or whatever to actually fight this thing. You know what I'm saying? They bank on it. Yeah. They give you so much that you're afraid to lose. We're like, well, I don't want to lose my car, my house, I don't want to grow my food. True. And which is funny because the guy I'm working with, the white dude I told you about, the movie dude, he has a book that he showed me, and it's like doomsday preppers. And I'm like, oh, it's some crazy shit. But he showed it to me. And he's like, no. He's like, look at it. And it literally tells you how to survive if the system breaks down. Yep. If you can't go to the grocery store and get food, you can go in your backyard. There's roots in your backyard that you can boil down, and they're more powerful painkillers than morphine.
Right.
And all this,
That's
all
why
this.
we're gonna survive when the system does break down, because so many of us have been living like that because it never worked for us.
Well, one of the things with you saying that as well, and working with new entrepreneurs or people aspiring to be an entrepreneur, they really don't make the changes they need to become successful and sustainable, because they're not willing to give up things. So they'll keep a full-time job and do their dream as a hobby so that they can have this nice car, this house, these clothes. So in looking at that, that's been frustrating for me working with the newer entrepreneurs, because it's like, why do you keep an $800 car payment? Why don't you get rid of that? And then this money can be driven in here, and then in 2 years you can actually be in the black and paying yourself. But they don't think like that. I can't get rid of this house. I have to have cable. I have to have, they're not willing to give up anything to make real change. So even with the activists, I'm sure it's the same. You know, they're invested in it and they want the change, but actually giving up a lot of the stuff that comes with is hard for them to do. And I've also, in working with Chinook and getting to see all the different nonprofits that are out there, social justice, a lot of them overlap. and no one's really willing to come together and combine. So that's frustrating. And also coming from a non-activist role, but wanting to participate in social justice, and make sure my business is for profit, but geared towards social change, and learning that, and they keep you out of actually participating and becoming involved. That's been frustrating for me too. So just seeing all the different, the amazing things going on, but then other groups are marginalized from other activists, when we really, like you said, need to all come together. And until we do that, we're not going to be able to make real change.
I feel, just real quick, I'm sorry.
No, I said for sure.
I feel that a lot of the work that's happening right now, instead of us, and I said this today online, instead of us evolving forward, like everybody is trying to replicate things that like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Cesar Chavez did. If you really look at where they were going to lead into, that's where we should pick up at. And I think that like when you look at Malcolm, when he came back from his excursion, being overseas and coming back, and he had very extreme views in the ways that he's seen the black white activism in the ways that he engaged versus Martin. But right when they both were offed, they were getting to that point where like, no, we got to galvanize.
Yep, they killed them niggas.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll let you fight.
Class.
Yeah, they'll let you
Exactly.
fight. They'll let you fight against the system. If you like, kill white, whatever, kill white. But as soon as you want to galvanize the people and bring them together, that's when they killed Martin. That's when they killed with who you talk about?
Caesar.
Malcolm X. Yeah. Malcolm X, when he was there first, when he was like, kill white, he was like, okay, whatever. But then when he went to Mecca and he came back, then he's like, look, we need to come together. They killed that motherfucker.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, instead of us continuing where they left off, instead of us continuing like, okay, they look like they were about to galvanize power, and from them galvanizing that power, evolving forward. Like, if you really look at like where Martin Luther King was, he started talking about financial literacy.
He started talking about economics.
He started talking about economics. Our communities as a whole, we don't have enough financial literacy to even buy back our neighborhoods, to even really take over and have that power, because we don't understand the way the business works within the system. And that's one thing that I think they really have us trapped, is financially when it comes to the literacy and the ways that the money works, the way that the banks work. We just don't have that information. And within not having that information, they keep us complacent in where we're at, instead of like getting that knowledge, us passing it down as entrepreneurs, and like really going back to our neighborhoods, educating our neighborhoods. Once black and brown people leave our neighborhoods, we don't look back. And the fact that we don't look back, that's the problem that keeps us stagnated.
One of the things that I think is not funny, but it's funny too, is my grandmother, she was upset. There was a white couple that moved in next door, and the area was always, Latino. And she was like, they're nosy bodies. They want to know who owes what, and they already knew how much his house was selling across the street. So she was upset by that. She said they were entremetida out there. But what she didn't realize, and what I was looking at her like, what are these white people? Why are they in our mix? Why do they want to know what's going on? But really, they're educated on the community. This price is going for this. This is good for me. Where the people that lived in the community, they thought that, keep your nose in your own business.
Stay out of their business.
That's how they are. Like when I drive around a Lyft, and I'll have a white couple in the back, and we'll be in neighborhoods way across town from theirs, and they'll know about that neighborhood. Yeah. Oh, well, they're doing it to that building right there, and that building's that much, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and we don't do that in our communities. We don't. And I'm like, that there are some things that you can take, and it will make you better. You know what I'm saying? And just knowledge, man. That's why it's so...
Civic participation.
Yeah.
Like when I came back to Denver, I had learned all these different tricks and tools that my community didn't give me. I got them from white communities, powerful communities. And when I got back to Swansea and I was like thinking about how do we build power in this community, the first thing I thought of was a RNO, a registered neighborhood organization. These are the groups that stop Walmart from coming in, stop liquor stores from coming in Wash Park and Cherry Creek. And I looked up Swansea to see if there was any in Swansea, and there weren't any in Swansea. And I was like, this is almost a completely minority community. We don't have a single organization set up to respond to anyone coming in, any money being spent. We had no no participation at all in the self-determination of our community. And like, that's the kind of stuff that keeps those people tuned in. You know, they know what's coming in on the corner. They know who it is. They know their history. They know how to get them out. They know how to galvanize power in the community. And I just started thinking, like, you know, people used to be so scared of us when we would come over for a game from Manuel. People would hear where we were from and they'd be so afraid of us. And all that fear, like, was for what? Like, we could have galvanized that, you know, we could have took that fear and turned it into something that was worthy of being fearful for. Like, these people come in, they know what their shit is about, they know what their community can do, and they do it. And so, like, it is about keeping the stuff that works, or teaching our community how to use those tools that they've used against us, and teaching them how to, like, use them for better.
And just learning how to communicate with people in the community. It's hard to talk to some of these old motherfuckers, man. It's like they stuck in their ways. You like, look, yo, nah, I don't give a fuck. Goddamn. So it's just, man, communicating, get through some thick skulls, and just getting people together, man. That's the hardest part, is just get the people in the community to galvanize those people.
Getting them to show up.
Exactly. Getting them to show up and come outside.
Just like with the I-70, a lot of people moving in here, and they think, oh, bigger is going to eliminate problems, but it doesn't, right?
No,
so you didn't touch on that yet. So even though they're widening this highway to be 20 lanes, it's still going to bottleneck into the mousetrap.
It's kind of, it's ridiculous that so many people are so ignorant to, like, transportation and infrastructure and that kind of planning, because, you know, we have all the information we want in the palm of our hands. And when we tell people, no, globally, urban highways have been proven ineffective, and expanding them is not effective either, because if you build it, they will come. And people have the proof right in their hands. They can look it up, but they will fight you. They will fight you to the death, saying, no, this is you need it to expand. There's more cars, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, just stop and think for 1 second where a highway expansion has eliminated traffic. And especially when it doesn't directly address the source of congestion, which is these bottlenecks onto 25 that are only 2 lanes. You're tripling the size of the parking lot that you will create out of I-70. You're not creating something that's efficient or effective. A connected street grid on the bottom would create that.
Right.
So, can you give us some information on Ditch the Ditch?
Yeah. Ditch the Ditch is everything we've been talking about. It's one of the most broad-based coalitions I've ever been a part of. It's people coming from all walks of life who are committed to a different vision of this city. And we have organized around the I-70 expansion and fighting against it. We've filed 4 lawsuits, 1 against the city of Denver, 3 against the federal government. And so our court dates are coming up next week. Our court starts for the City Park lawsuit. And the City Park lawsuit is connected to the I-70 expansion because CDOT cut out the drainage portion of this study and let Denver handle it, and kick Denver some money their way for a little bit of it. But they cut it out so that the study wouldn't have to go bigger and actually look at the entire ecosystem. And so we're suing because of that. And then the EPA lowered their compliance standards for clean air. So this project slid through, and we're suing the EPA on that. And then the other 2 lawsuits, one is another Clean Air Act, so it's some one-off claims on the Clean Air Act. And the other one is a National Environmental Protection Act challenge. And what we're saying is that them cutting that drainage piece out made the study incomplete, and it will kick them back to study it again and broaden their scope a little bit.
And these people already know, or they're aware that there's special filters brought into these schools. They're shut, locked indoors at certain times because of the high traffic and the carbon monoxide poisoning and everything that's out there. So they're all aware of this, yet they still, which is just
and
is
DPS
crazy.
took the biggest bribe.
Don't give a fuck. That's what it is. They don't give a fuck.
Literally don't.
They don't give a fuck. They know
don't.
they have all the information right there. They look at it like, okay, well, we can't let them know this, that, and that, and then we'll hand them this little incomplete thing, and hopefully no one is around to challenge it.
Right. And DPS is at the heart of this fight, and they've been radio silent because they took a $13 million bribe from CDOT.
Yep.
And in other places, like in California, it's illegal to locate a school within 500 feet of a freeway because they've studied the impact on developing lungs, on pregnant women, on developing babies. And they've proven it's so harmful that it's illegal.
And Bruce Randolph High School is like right there.
And Swansea will be the playground that is the cap. Like elementary babies playing on a playground on top of the highway. But because they're all black and brown, you know, they don't care about them. Not even our school board rep cares. And DPS took that $13 million and was like, cool, we'll be quiet.
Right. And there's a lot of those styles of politics that are happening behind closed doors. A lot of people aren't paying attention to that. What do you think is really getting the community to have their guards down against those styles of impacts? Do you think that they are just not informed, or do you think that they see opportunity in some aspect in that engagement? Like, what do you feel like is keeping the community really knowledgeable?
So I think there's both things happening. I think that the people who are in the community and they're interfacing with CDOT or the city of Denver, it's the first time many of these people have ever interfaced with government officials at any level. And so for some people, they're super suspicious and they're like, no, you already effed us before, we don't trust you. But then there's this other group of people, which I would argue is a much smaller group of people, who are intrigued or excited that there's someone in the government trying to talk to them, even if they're talking to them to sell them lies or to misrepresent truths. And so you have a few people who think that this is great opportunity. It's gonna make it prettier in our neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. But
they're going to have sidewalks finally.
Right.
I've heard that. Oh, we're going to get sidewalks. We've never had them.
Yeah, they're selling them. They're putting a couple of carrots on so that people feel like they're gaining something out of it. And they're taking advantage of the fact that people don't have the other information they need to make an
And they've been having little like festivals or gatherings as well. Ice cream socials, and the people are like wanting to go there. And then also they're selling these neighborhoods because they have lower call-ins, lower crime, but they don't. We just don't call the police.
Exactly.
So because they don't listen when we do call.
Right.
Especially in that neighborhood, that's always been labeled as the bad neighborhood, and the interactions.
And now, if they think you're Latino, you're automatically like illegal as well.
Yeah.
And you know, going through that, so they're not calling, so they're feeding them all this misinformation. I am a member of your closed group that you have, Ditch to Ditch. So I've gotten a lot of good information out of there. So it's been good. And people are super active within it. Yeah.
Join that. We scare the shit out of the city with that one because we have over 5,000 members. I think we're up to 6,000 members of people who exclusively like devote energy to fighting this expansion, pulling up new research, helping do actions. It's pretty awesome. And the people... We've actually had the mayor, our city council person, and Shaylin Bott, the executive director of CDOT, join the group because they were so curious.
They wanted to know what was going on. And you ask questions too, so you know when they're going in there. Yeah, so when you enter the group, it does ask you like, why do you want to be part of this group, and are you like a member of any of these communities? So it's not like you could just click join. So she has it set up that way. So they'd have to like.
Well, that's the deepest part.
Themselves.
They are a part of that community, and
I always put them on blast.
Yeah,
like
that's
when they join, I was like, "How about everybody on Ditch the Ditch? Welcome our newest member, Mayor Michael Hancock. Let him know what you think about the ditch and what you want him to do about it." And like people just go in, like using social media and these tools for this kind of work has been really cool because it's powerful. None of them like being shamed on social media because any of their constituents can look it up and find it.
Right.
And they act like it's not meaningful, but it has been meaningful.
So how can people get involved in the work that's happening, and like what new things are you developing out that you want people to get engaged in?
There's definitely levels to this. So not everybody wants to jump all the way into the deep end, but to get started, definitely join the Ditch the Ditch Facebook page. That's a good way to like dip your toes in the water and get a feel for what's happening with that. But as far as like the cases are unfolding. We're planning other actions that will communicate to people through that Ditch the Ditch Facebook page. I'm gonna keep those confidential right now because it's important that they're like not expected. But stay tuned in with the cases. One is all week next week. One is in DC on the 19th of September. We'll post all the updates on the Ditch the Ditch page. But as far as what I'm doing in the community to make sure we can respond to this when we win and they stop by 70 is getting this land trust started. So Globeville, Elyria, Swansea has, we have this coalition called the GES Coalition for Health and Housing Justice. And we're about to start a land trust to take back our community. And so what we're saying is, yes, we're an 84% Latino neighborhood, but whoever has been pushed out of anywhere, if you're looking for somewhere to buy and you have the same vision that we have about this like shared economy, come to Swansea. If you're going to buy homes anywhere, come and do it in GES and let's build some rail power, because we want to preserve the culture and the history of being a historically immigrant POC community. And we want to do it with people who have experienced the push out so that they have passion about community control.
I think one of the deepest things about what's happening in that community right now is that for so long people didn't want to live there. And now that like the east side, 5 Points, that whole area is so expensive to go ahead and purchase, now people are like, oh, I might check this out over here. And it's an aggravating thing just because I know people who have bought and purchased homes in there way before this whole action has happened, and they were able to purchase a home at a fraction of the cost that you normally would purchase a home. So to see that there's so much interest in that area right now, it's kind of gross. Yeah. That kind of just
there's
like
so many just Airbnbs. Driving Lyft part-time. I'll take people and I'm like, And this is implicit bias, but I'm like, yeah, you don't belong in this area. What are you doing here? And they're like, oh, I'm staying at an Airbnb. And I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. Like, if they knew the history of this area, but they're coming in on vacation. This is like Disneyland for adults right now. And they're like, oh, this is close to downtown. The transportation is good. This Airbnb is nice. It's a cute little neighborhood. But can you take me to a different liquor store? Because this one down the street on the corner, there's some shade, there's some characters there.
There's been a lot of stories about like these, suburban white people going to Airbnbs in these urban areas and then start complaining about the area. There was a lot in New York where it was the one, she went to like some Hispanic neighborhood and she was upset because they were outside playing music on the street and dancing and stuff.
You're in an Airbnb, go home.
And there was one with the ice cream truck.
Wow.
Yeah, I dropped this. I had this couple in my car and we were driving, I was taking him, I want to say to like 25th, 26th and Larimer, whatever, to some kind of brewery, and we were driving down. I got off I-70 and went the back way, and they were like, oh man, is that guy pushing a popsicle cart? They're like, they're selling food. Like, I've only ever seen that in Mexico. They do that here? I'm like, what the fuck? Like, go back home.
Bye.
Like,
bye.
What are you
Hashtag
doing?
Bye.
Like, man, just seeing all these, like...
It's literally like they're in a zoo. They're looking at stuff like, oh my God, look at this. This really happens.
And that's really when I became more aware of the community, because I went to school, I got my degree, I worked in a lab, and I just stayed there, and I just did what my grandparents instilled. And it wasn't until like I wanted to have my own business, and I needed more money, so I was like, oh, Lyft is good. I started to see the community. You can really tell the climate of what's going on by Colfax. Prostitution is real. It's not what you think it is. It's big business here in Denver now. The marijuana people are coming here from all over the world daily in the airport. It's crazy busy out there right now. There's just so much like going on that you don't know unless you submerge
You're out there.
yourself.
And that link is missing, right? The link between all the Airbnbs and the marijuana industry. What is the quickest way to wash a whole bunch of money that you can't bank? Buy property. So there's a direct connection that nobody's studying, and that's important.
Somebody told me something about the money too with them buying up a lot of property. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was
Cash
something.
offers. Cash offers. They'll outbid anyone because that's how they wash their money overnight, and they have an asset that's only going to appreciate. And now you have all these vacant spaces that are Airbnb houses, and so that's contributing to the homelessness issue, the lack of affordability.
And then because they even have more money on top of that, they're ripping down these houses or adding on and making some monstrosity in a neighborhood where it's like a 800 square foot properties normally in that area, so they can have like dual places. Because even with Google now, it'll take you to a random obscure area, just like on York. I want to say around 27th. These houses have been turned into 4 townhomes, and so they've added in addresses. And you know, even if you're from here, you don't know because
like, what?
This was one house. Yeah, literally, that's how it is right now, and that's how they're, you know, doing their money. And then also they make deals. So with the Airbnbs being theirs, I will actually take people there and they're like, oh, we have this like coupon or this free half pound whatever from da-di-da. Can you take me there too? You know, so then
it's a whole package.
It's a whole package deal. And
it's brilliant on their behalf as far as like a capitalist endeavor, but it's crazy and we don't know about it. But RNOs, if you establish an RNO, any permit to add an address, to rezone a lot, to rezone a house, comes to you, to your group, and you have the opportunity to say, we don't want it here, we don't need it here, this is not the character or culture of our community. But if we don't use that tool, we don't have any power.
So what's the future? What's the future look like in these neighborhoods? I know with the displacement that's happening, a lot of the communities getting pushed out to the suburbs, Aurora, Thornton, Westminster, wherever. What do you see the future, the near future, looking like in these neighborhoods? Do you feel that the communities will be able to salvage some of the history and some of like the root of what it is? Or do you think that we're up for a big battle coming up in the near future that...
I think that we're gonna do it through a big battle. I think that I'm an eternal optimist, so I have hope for the community and I have hope for mine in particular. I think that we can do something, we can fight back, and it's about actually becoming aware and doing something about it. For a long time we haven't fought back, and it's that time right now, and we can preserve that identity, that culture, that history, but not through inaction. It's going to require a real fight. It's going to require us to do different things with our Saturdays and Sundays and evenings. A lot of people are real tuned in to their football, their TV, their internet, and that's not where the change is going to happen. The change is in these streets, and if we want change bad enough, if we have something that's important enough to preserve, it's going to require us to restructure how we spend our free time. And for some of us, it's going to require us to restructure what we do with our paid time too. And so for me, I think that the future for my community is that we remain a predominantly minority or POC community, because we're not the minority anymore. We remain a strong, united community that wants community control and takes back control over our resources. So that's what I see happening for Swansea. And I am committed to helping any other community here in Denver that wants to make it happen for themselves. And hopefully we can figure out a way to blend our efforts and create something that's real and secure for all of us.
And what's LaRae said this earlier, and I do consider you an activist in the ways that you engage. But there's a lot of community out there who feel like they can't be engaged within activism, within advocacy. Speaking up for the communities, what's your suggestion for those who are on the sidelines that want to be involved but feel like they aren't the ones to do the work? Like, do you have any suggestions for those people who, you know, they don't feel like they're the activists. They don't feel like they're the advocate to go and like really speak for the community.
Some motherfuckers are just lazy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's that too.
There's that.
And I think the lingo, there's a whole different vocabulary that's intimidating as well when you're not in it, like POC and what's the other one? Overstand. And I mean, there's just all these little that, you know, when you know what's right from wrong and your heart is in the right place and you want to do something to create positive change, you see that it's intimidating. I know that's what kind of kept me on the outside until I got involved with Chinook as well.
I really think that that's a thought that is a manifestation of oppression. And when people think that, it's because it's a clear indicator that they have internalized oppression. And I think that's the first step to recognize that my mind is imprisoned for me to even think that. And that should drive them to work even harder to do something, because inaction in the situation that we're in is action. That you are fighting for someone, you're just not fighting for your people if you're not doing anything, especially the lazy people, because there are a lot of people who are tired or who don't feel like a fight is going to yield a positive outcome. And so call it lazy, call it internalized oppression, call it whatever you want, but like, those people have to recognize that their future is literally tied to this moment right now. Like, you will not have the luxury to be lazy ever again if you don't fight for something now.
Right now.
Also, some people just don't give a fuck. There's people out there that know everything that's going on is like, I don't care. And you're an optimistic person. I, on the other hand, am not. This is what I believe, man.
So I hate balances.
Go, give it to me. Give it to me.
This is how it is. Since we ain't gonna, you know what I'm saying, forcefully overthrow this motherfucker, it's gonna take generations. It took generations to condition us this way. It's gonna take generations to uncondition us. So, I mean, yes, it does. It starts here, to where now, yes, we are connected to people. We can easily reach out to people. We can research things, and a lot of the truths of the lies they told us are coming out. So people are starting to see, like, okay, this has been a setup from the beginning. So yeah, let's do something. But it's gonna take generations to really get to a point to where we can feel comfortable and feel like we're actually a part of this culture, or create our own.
I know even last night at Bar Red, I don't think that you were outside, but Maule and Skip, Rip, the DJ, and my nephew were outside, and there were some guys coming from the strip club next door, and they were throwing around the N-word, and then they realized the company they were in, and then they apologized, but then they wanted to start fighting as well. So that was kind of something that
because they got
happened
called out and they had to be
in the middle
accountable.
of downtown last night. So that was disheartening. And then also I saw another post yesterday about, you know, Latinos using the N-word, and, you know, we can't have positive change until even that stops, you know, kind of thing.
This is what we take too much time looking at bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, a person gets on TV, says the N-word. We make them lose their job. Okay, that person is still a racist.
Yeah.
That person is still in the communities. We haven't done anything significant about making this person lose their job.
But one of the reasons I brought that up, too, is, like with what you both said, is it's going to take generations and a lot of work and hard work and really getting into some conflict. But also, I feel like sometimes, I don't know if this is an excuse, but I watch us marginalize on each other as people of color, when if we came together as a group and quit doing that shit to each other. Like, the first time I was in Chinook, someone asked me, like, they were talking about the N-word and whatever, and I was like, well, when I was a kid, you know, we were labeled as beaners. And to me, that was almost like a term of endearment, but there was this white woman in my group, and she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I was like, really? Because I was kind of proud of that label, but but then retraining that thought, like us, like calling that to each other, and
I mean, it's the same thing with the word nigga. It's the same thing in the hood.
It's the same with the word bitch. Like, these are my bitches. We used to say that, and I had to evolve to a place where I was like, I've got more loving words to honor these women that I feel strongly about. I don't need to use that word.
And I feel like when you're able to call someone some kind of, bitch or the N-word or beaner, it actually, like, dehumanizes them in a way to where when you are really pissed at that person or you are mad, what the fuck you gonna say then?
You sunk that low on a friendly level.
I would like to say that bitch has its place.
No.
Some motherfuckers bitches.
When you're saying it as a term of endearment.
Oh, yeah.
That's not appropriate.
No, because then what are you going to say when you're mad?
Exactly.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, if I'm calling you a bitch, I'm bad at you. You push me on to that level.
It's all rooted in that Willie Lynch condition. Like, if we're breaking each other down, they don't need to do it. And they've mastered that within the system.
Work ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm just really starting to
he always
notice
says
how
stuff better. I'm just like, I'm noticing all this, and then he's like, just.
It's true, but we were talking about this before we came in here. Like, especially black and brown people, we do not realize the power of our connection. Cinco de Mayo is one of the examples I bring up all the time because most people don't know why Cinco de Mayo is celebrated in the United States and not in Mexico. And so people talk about, it was a battle of Puebla, that's why we celebrate it. Well, why would the United States celebrate that? Well, what the Cinco de Mayo was actually during our Civil War when we were fighting against slavery. Mexico had already abolished slavery. So we allied with the Union, and the French were allied with the Confederates. And so the French tried to attack the United States through Mexico, through Puebla. And Mexicans defeated the French in Puebla on the Cinco de Mayo, which was the turning point for the win against slavery. And so we were allied there, but then they knew that, right? And so when the United States took the Southwest from Mexico, the one thing that they promised Mexicans was that the Mexicans in the Southwest, they would not be treated like black people. Even though we had this history of fighting for each other. And so then you have a census and ways to identify yourself that never fit. Mexicans didn't have a category. Latinos didn't have a category to choose for racial identity except for white.
Yeah, it's still that way. When you pick, I have to pick white, and then later you can pick Hispanic.
But our history
it's white.
Fighting for each other is so powerful. And obviously they don't teach it to us because if they did, it would help unite us. But for us too, I grew up in a black and brown community, and I always said the N-word growing up. And there was a point in my own development that I had to, it was when I got rid of saying bitch to my friends. My best friend, I called her my bitch, and she grabbed my face and she was just like, Candi, I am your best friend in the whole world. Like, why would you pick that word to describe me? And it stopped me in my tracks, and I was just like, oh shit. Like, why would I choose that word? And so with our kids, I ask them to try to, when they use the N-word or bitch as like a term of endearment, just try for a week to substitute the word that you actually mean and see what that feels like. And after experimenting with it, kids still slip up, but a lot of them are like, you're right. Like, I do have better words to tell someone I care about them or to elevate them.
I think it's it's kind of fucked up, but it's kind of impressive how they use human nature against us, And I was actually talking to people about this. I'm like, everything else in the world is governed by nature. And there's just certain things nature is going to dictate that certain things do. Like birds fly south for the winter in the V formation because of nature. That's what it dictates. We're the same things. We think because we got an iPhone 7 or whatever that we aren't governed by nature anymore, and we're more intelligent than that. So they put niggas at the bottom. They put black folks at the bottom because they know we have a need to. In society, there's always going to be a hierarchy. There's going to be somebody up here. There's going to be somebody down. That's just the way it is. Even in smaller groups, there's going to be a leader. There's going to be people that's going to follow. There's going to be people at the bottom. They made black people the bottom. They give us nothing. and then they give everybody else the option to be above us. And in their minds, they think, well, if I'm here, then I can get here, and I can get here, and that works against everybody because everybody wants to get to the next level, and you just shitting on the people under you, while the people at the top is perpetuating the whole thing down.
Yeah.
Right.
Colorism is the real bitch because there are Black Mexicans.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
They're
I'm one of them.
Yeah, like there are Black Latinos, and in every society there is that color gradient, that color scale, and the colorism is horrible intra-communities.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm doing right now. I made a project called Acuna Black, and I'm like the darkest one in my family. And the reason why I did the project was because of that narrative, because of the disconnect between Black and Latino. My mom is a Black Latino. My dad is from Haiti and Cuba. So like really connecting to this, like, no, we're all one though, regardless of the way that we divide ourselves up. It's all the same.
Yeah.
And really, like, us realizing that, once we realize that as a community and we're able to get past these ideas of one another that have been systematically programmed in us, we're going to be powerful. And I think we're slowly getting there. I feel like right now, and that's the optimist in me, I feel like right now we're really looking for our indigenous roots. And that's where our answers really are at. When you really look at our ancestral, like, root, there's so many similarities, like, past, like, these different constructs that
read
we...
my mind. I was thinking that the whole time.
I am optimistic that, you know, all the new information is coming out. Just like I told you about the guy that I shared that video on my page. I shared this video. What's his name? That's your boy,
Romani Malco.
Yeah, he had this whole breakdown of slavery and oppression and all this, and I shared it on my Facebook page. And this white guy that I'm working with right now, he watched it, and like when I came to his house to do some work with him, like he just had all these emotions in his ass. He like, dude, I did not know 95% of this shit.
And I think broke down shit
he
historically.
Broke it. I mean, he broke it down to the bare bones.
I'm gonna go find y'all on Facebook.
Yeah, and the dude was just like, dude, he like, how do you wipe off an entire section of people out of the world? You air raid them, and I don't know about this. This is in the history book. It isn't taught.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? And I'm like, that's what history is.
Why you don't know about
exactly. That's the whole thing.
That's what gentrification is. You're seeing them wipe away that history so fast right in front of our eyes. And that's the scariest part about it, is that, like, we're literally, like, watching them reform history in front of us.
Yeah.
Like, the East Side will not be what it's going to be in 50 years. Like, we won't take the way.
But this is the thing behind it, though. And what common white people that move into these places, they don't have the idea. This is the way they look at it.
They've also been deprived.
Yeah, they look at it like, well,
True.
if you guys would have taken care of your own community, exactly,
I've heard that a
then
lot.
we wouldn't be able to move in here like this. But they don't understand the fact that we've been marginalized, and every time we've tried to do something, we've been pushed back.
And
It's
we
a
don't have
savior
access to
complex.
capital.
And we don't have access to capital, resources, any of that stuff. So that's why they're just able to move in and take over.
Same thing with
Everybody.
colonization.
Yeah.
The same way it
Same
worked.
shit.
Everybody is so far removed from history that we can't look at what's happening with the scrape in the north side and see the same exact thing that happened when colonizers, the Spaniards, came to Mexico, for example, and ripped down pyramids and built Catholic churches on top and with the rubble of the pyramid. That is a direct parallel that we're oblivious to.
Well, there's some houses on Pennsylvania Street right now, like I want to say 8th-ish, 12th-ish, that some of those white settlers that came in, they took rock from the Garden of the Gods, which is a very spiritual place. Right. So these houses have been said to be haunted or whatever, but they actually took rock from sacred land here in Colorado and brought it to Denver and made houses, with them. So, like, they had no respect for, they didn't care. They're like, oh, this is cool shit.
Like, you just taking
but
the
they
ancestors.
say that about the main church in Mexico City, in the Zócalo. It is sinking, and it's like you can see visually, like the church, this huge temple, is one of the most beautiful churches in the world, but it's like all crooked and falling. And they say that it's because they did that. They ripped down the pyramids and used that to build it, and it's the revenge, right?
Right.
The
yeah, that's what they
revenge.
say.
That's one thing I came up growing up. My dad being from Haiti, we were always like taught that like Haiti was cursed, like we were considered like we made a deal with the devil, is what they say about Haiti. And the real thing about Haiti is they connected to who they were within their indigenous roots, meaning that they did practice voodoo, they did practice Santeria, but the power of what that was they made the white people who were enslaving them banished out of their place. They pretty much took heads within that. And I think that that's really what they're really scared of us connecting into our indigenous roots, because that's real power.
Well,
us getting out of the
and I also know that people, POCs of the world, are the ones that created the numbers, the medicines, have been the most brilliant clocks.
They created
everything. So to keep us disconnected from the history would mean that people don't know how brilliant they are,
and they
or
keep
they have
you
the
from
opportunity.
your divinity, right? They keep you from your divinity and separate God from you. When we are all gods, we are God all together, and this is like, and we should act in godly ways, and that like separation is just pervasive. You see it in all organized religion. Organized religion is a tool of social control. And even with the Israelites, I had some kids who were telling me stuff that was super valid. They were looking at the Bible, like the history book, and then they go, but it's our fault. Our oppression over time has been our fault. And it's fascinating how organized religion can take something, the reasonable parts of something, and then like, bam, smack you in the face with the real oppressive parts, and you internalize both.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a conversation with one of my brothers who is a Black Israelite. He was really breaking down how like the Bible actually works out to be an actual historical document of where the money actually is rooted to. So the bagats, the reason why they're so important is because it lets you know how that family member was connected to the root of where the money actually came from, and how the Israelites, the Jewish people, are already connected to this financial hub, and how they're really connected into it through blood minds. And you know, when you think about religion and faith and things like that, spirituality is one thing. Religion and the constructs of what it is, totally different.
Yeah,
totally different.
The whole thing of religion was oppressive. I was actually reading a document about this guy that studied the Dead Sea Scrolls for like 13 years, and he got so far but didn't decipher them all. And pretty much what he said is that Jesus was just a good dude. He was just a good guy, a good Samaritan, and he didn't gain divinity until like 100 years after his death. And it's like anything else. People were telling the stories of this guy, and they just got more incredible until it became like a fairy tale thing. And it was a time to where people would gather around and listen to these stories of this man, and it just blew into, and like I said, the idea, great. Someone comes along like, oh, I can use that to control people now. That's what you got.
Well, we're getting down to the wind down, guys. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm sort of sad. It's like, it might be fast. Like, wait.
We're going to have you back on here again for sure.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Did we miss anything?
Shit, we covered it all.
Okay.
I don't even know if the listener's going to draw the line. We were all over the place.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah, we were.
Right on. Do you have anything coming up that people should know about engaging?
People can come to court on Monday. They can actually sit in the court and watch the proceedings happen. So as long as everyone is well behaved, because we don't want to make a judge mad, I invite everyone down to the city and county building on Monday, tomorrow, to watch the City Park case unfold. If anyone's in DC, they can catch the one on the 19th. Join the page, ask questions, we'll give details. We do have a fundraiser coming up, but I'm a horrible human because I can't remember what day it is. But if you join the Facebook page, Ditch the Ditch, we will definitely keep you posted.
What time is the court?
I think they're going to start at 9 a.m.
Okay.
So.
Also, they should follow Project Voice and sign up for your newsletter. Your newsletters, I've been subscribed to it for about a year, so that's how I kind of keep up on what's going on with the youth and how they're standing up for their community against people in government. And not afraid of them,
people.
too.
Yeah, that's the way.
Didn't they just, like, refuse some money from a politician like this last summer? I had told Illa, I was like, man, that made me so proud that they were like...
Albus Brooks money.
Yeah, Yeah, I was I didn't want to know if it was okay to say who it was, but when that was going on, I was so freaking stoked. I was like, yes.
Yeah, we definitely keep an eye on where our donations come from, and if there's anything that feels like we're being coerced, we send that shit back, because that's how we roll.
That's what it is.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's it. We leaving up out here.
Well, let's go ahead and get the last. LaRae, what you got coming up?
So September 2nd, we are going to do an 80s party. I had wanted to move it, but I just realized the date. So I think it's going to have to be at Bar Red, because it's too close.
Okay.
I wanted to have it somewhere else, and then we also have comedy show September 2nd or 14th. And
I'll be here.
Oh, yeah?
I'll be in Vegas.
Oh, shit. God dang,
I
he's
can
in the World Series of Comedy.
I can get you somebody. Fill in.
I just need a feature, I guess. And then on the 19th, we have the Virgo party.
I won't be here either.
I'm a Virgo.
Damn, I'm gonna miss 2 events. That's
What
bullshit.
the hell?
I'm gonna be gone the whole week. I'm gonna be in Vegas the whole week.
Yeah, so that's
So
what
y'all
I got
can't even
going on.
come out then.
No, I'm gonna be in Washington on
just
September. Oh, don't be sad. It's gonna be good. It's gonna
I
all
wanted
work
to go
out.
to Vegas.
It's gonna all work out.
I could cancel this show. Just kidding.
What you got?
I'll be hosting down at Looney's in Colorado Springs Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week. I can't even do James Brown. I'm pissed.
Oh man, you were excited
I
about
was
that.
so
too.
I got the whole.
There's a
outfit and
cool
everything.
show where they'll pick a famous person, and the comic has to do their comedy like they were that person.
Yeah,
Nice.
it was. I was pretty excited about that, but I'm gonna be down at Looney's.
I would have wanted to see
hosting down
that.
there.
James Brown.
Make sure to get your tickets to support at Comedy Works. Anthony should put something on his Facebook, because they do tell bring them too. I mean, that's all calculated.
I'm making a flyer
into the
and
contest.
everything
And the lineup
today.
is fire.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
People don't want to miss that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good
lineup.
ass show. It's gonna be a dope show. I just want to say to the ladies out there, if you're gonna wear a tight dress and you have on body magic under it, we all know you are not fooling anybody. Okay, that's it.
All right, that's all. That's all. I got a new album getting ready to come out, guys. Acuna Black, Creative Vintage Dreams, with the man who's doing the beats right now, Fat Track.
Shout out to Fat Track.
Big up, Fat Track. He's in LA right now.
Love you, Fat Track.
We do love you. And a few events coming up. I have an event coming up in September that I'm not going to be at. I don't even know why I brought that up. I'm going to be in Washington for the NACO gathering for the Citizen Oversight Board nationally. And I'll be also preparing and dropping more videos for the Acuna Black project that'll be releasing in October, an art show that'll be going on at the Redline Art Gallery. Stay tuned, stay focused. We appreciate you guys listening to us. Check us out on WeAreDenver, Twitch, Ghost House Studios, and listen to us on All Real Radio. Peace.